Please watch the video until the end to see how everything connects and why the choice matters. Chapter 1. Countdown. The alarm started 2 hours before midnight, gentle at first, a chime woven into the hum of the house's systems, then a more insistent tone, like a clock reminding a guilty man of a debt. I stood in the kitchen, the room's lights already dimmed to economy mode, and watched the orange digits on the security panel crawl toward 0. Mara was upstairs, fixing a bandage on her hand after a broken glass. Outside, our neighbors were pulling shutters and rolling metallic doors across windows. The neighborhood had the practiced, almost ceremonial pace of people preparing for something they told themselves they were used to. I had done the drills. I had hidden the extra blades, bolted the reinforced locks, and tested the generator. Still, the ritual always felt obscene. One night when every crime became permitted, licensed, and encouraged. I had read the speeches, the pundit sermons, the glossy propaganda. They called it catharsis. They called it renewal. I called it a single night where fear had a currency. When the public address system announced the start, the voice was simultaneously soothing and clinical. Commencement of annual night of absolution, it said, and in the next breath my throat went dry. The house seemed to inhale and hold its breath with me. Chapter 2. A noise at the gate. About 20 minutes in, a sharp metallic clang rattled the gate. I thought it wind until a shadow moved against the frosted glass by the front entrance. My heart pistoned. I activated the external cameras. 2 figures, masked and hooded, stood beyond the ironwork, their silhouettes blotting out the porch light. "Stay down," I whispered to Mara. She clutched the bandaged hand to her chest, eyes wide but steady. I watched the intruders, expecting them to test the lock or shout an ultimatum. They didn't. One tapped something at his wrist, a device like a watch, and they peeled away to the side, turning toward the alley. They were not amateurs. They moved with a quiet coordination that suggested planning and purpose. Minutes later, a faint knock came from the back door, 3 short raps. My stomach dropped. Back doors are for purpose-made entries. I crept along the corridor with a heavy flashlight and a kitchen knife that felt suddenly inadequate. Through the peephole I saw a woman, her face streaked with dirt, eyes frantic. She mouthed something, "Please." Mara's fingers left little crescent marks in my palm when she gripped it. "We can't let anyone in," she said, voice a hard whisper. "You know the rules." I did. But the thing about rules is that they are moral scaffolding until someone you recognize becomes an exception. The woman's breath fogged the glass. I could imagine the night stretching behind her. Runaways, victims of purges past, people whose lives had been ejected into the street. I opened the bolt long enough to let her push in, and then slammed and deadbolted the door. Her name, when she managed to tell it between panicked gasps, was Priya. Chapter 3. The Trap Next Door. Allowing Priya into the house rewired everything. Mara wanted to call the authorities, an act that felt absurd during a sanctioned night, while I wanted to help. Priya spoke quickly, breathless. A group had cornered her near the old mill and demanded she come with them. She had escaped, but they were looking for her now. Her story smelled of truth, holes in her jacket, a trail of mud on her shoes. She'd lost anyone who could protect her. We debated. The cameras showed movement across the street. Our neighbor, Jonas, walking with 2 men under the glow of a porch light. He nodded, apparently at nothing. The men glanced at our house and then away. I told myself he wasn't watching us. Then the sound came, the engine of a heavy truck idling at the corner, the low conversation of men who did not intend to reason or be placated. 2 things I learned that night. Fear is loud and group thought is louder. Decisions become commandments when a crowd decides them. Around 2 in the morning the house vibrated with pounding at our shared fence. The men had come in force. They started shouting names, accusing the neighborhood of harboring exemptions. Our door's sensor flared red. Someone outside had triggered the motion lights. Jonas's voice called through laminated pipes, too casual, asking if we'd seen anyone suspicious. I lied. I lied because telling the truth felt like handing a loaded gun to the unknown. Chapter 4. Bargains and Blood. They came with ladders and a battering ram, an ugly ritual that had been followed in this neighborhood for more than a decade. We could hear chanting through the planks of the walls, a choir of menace. Mar wanted to call out, to beg. I wanted to set traps, simple, non-lethal measures that had been practiced after drills, to slow their entry. We prepared, breath and motion becoming synchronized in the dim. There was a moment of awful potential where two men began to climb the side of the house. I met one on the landing, torchlight slicing his face into a mask of brutality. He smelled of smoke and beer. He came at me with a swinging metal bar. I'd never imagined the weight of killing someone directly, not in rehearsal. I wielded the knife with an animal desperation. The blow missed me by inches and found the plaster instead. The sound of it cracked something inside me. He fell backwards, cursing, and I slammed the door behind him. They kept coming. One voice rang out different, controlled. Jonas. He was standing at his own window and pointing, calculating. A silhouette separated from the shouting mob and walked to our gate. Through the camera feed I saw him hand something to the man at the gate. A small card with our house number and a flourish. It was a betrayal disguised as civic duty. Finally, they offered a bargain, hand over the woman they claimed had wronged them and they would leave. They called it justice. Fatigue pressed on our faces like a physical weight. I felt the house close in, as if the walls could press us into a decision. The choice was clear as a blade: refuse and risk attack, or surrender and condemn a person to unknown horrors. I could hear the crowd outside sing-songing their judgment, a prayer for absolution they had rehearsed for years. Chapter 5. The door between us. I could not hand Priya over. Not because of any high-minded morality, but because the look in her eyes that night was the look of someone who had nowhere to return to and nothing left to lose. Mara argued the other side: survival, the children across the street, the roof above our heads. The argument tore a seam in us that night where silk used to be. We tried to make our small fortress as unappealing as possible. Lights off, systems on auto, noises that suggested we were empty. The mob thudded at the property line like a heart that refuses to stop. At some point voices became indistinguishable, a human static that washed in waves. They sent someone onto the roof. Shingles scraped. A spotlight swung across our windows and found the shape of something under a sheet in the living room. A prop, a trick, and the mob laughed. I contemplated unlocking the door, stepping out, and telling them to take what they wanted. I also imagined the way their faces would look up close, upturned to the sky, absolved by a system that made murder a civic ritual. There would be no consequences. The law had been stripped of teeth for acts performed that night, and that absence felt like an invitation. When the battering ram finally hit the door, something in me snapped. I moved like a man who had always rehearsed for moments he never expected to face. I sprang, I pushed, I fought. The door gave. The first man who crossed the threshold smelled of tobacco and fear. We fought in the maze of our home, the place where we had once argued about trivialities, now a theater of screams. In the chaos, I saw Jonas standing in the doorway, watching. Watching as if the violence were a spectacle he had purchased tickets for. He had a camera phone raised, capturing the scene. He smiled. The kind of thin, satisfied smile that can belong only to people who believe their side of history will be written well. Chapter 6. Aftermath. Dawn arrived on spent feet, a gray exhaustion that left no winners. The mob dispersed as the law returned its teeth, and the city reclaimed its streets. Sirens began to wail, not rescue but consequence arriving belatedly. We emerged into a world that had been scrubbed clean of its night. The news vans cruised past, their lights sighing off into the morning. Jonas waved, hand polite and flat, a facade of neighborly concern. We counted losses. Our house survived in shape. A wall splintered, a few windows busted, but the worst damage was less tangible. Priya was gone. In the scramble, she'd slipped out a back gate while we distracted the men by setting off a false fire alarm and a series of smoke bursts. I didn't see her go. Mara cried without making a sound. I felt her grief as a pressure on my chest. Days later, footage surfaced online. Jonas had uploaded his videos, edited and narrated. He told a story that twisted the night into heroics. How the neighborhood had defended itself against a ring of renegade criminals who preyed on citizens during the night. In his version, he and others were saviors. In the corners of his footage, faces blurred and names muffled. In the comments section, people thanked him for his bravery. No one thanked us, the ones who had harbored the vulnerable. No trending tag celebrated the missing. The city made speeches about unity and vigilance. They passed more legislation to promote neighbor reporting and incentivize surveillance. They framed it as progress. I lay awake thinking about how easy it is to breed monsters by naming them. The Purge, the sanctioned night, had always been a perversion of morality, but now it seemed to have mutated into a narrative that rewarded spectatorship and punished empathy. Chapter 7. The Reckoning We Carry. Months passed. The scars on our home faded, but other marks would not. Mara stopped sleeping with the light off. I found myself cataloging the faces of neighbors differently, looking for cracks in their civility. Priya's absence echoed like a missing word in a sentence. Sometimes I imagined her somewhere safe, sculpting a new life from the ruins. Sometimes I imagined the worst, and the image tasted like bile in my mouth. The purge had been sold to the country as a curative, a hole burned through the rot of a society to let fresh air in. Instead, it revealed how quickly a society could justify its cruelties. The night had a logic of its own. The lawless hour didn't erase the next day's priorities. It rearranged them. People who had watched violence become entertainment rationalized their detachment. People who had cameras became chroniclers, and eventually judges. I started taking the camera out again, not to post but to keep a record for myself, not of the dramatic, viral moments but of quiet, small resistances. I filmed Mara planting a late-season sapling in the yard, hands in dirt, patient. I recorded Jonas fixing his mailbox, his movements careful, his gaze sometimes darting to the house as if expecting notoriety to return. I kept filming, because memory demanded witnesses. One evening, months after that night, I received a note slipped under the gate. No names. No signatures. A single line, "We saw you." Underneath, a photo of Priya smiling, alive, standing in front of a bus with a destination sticker reading South. I touched the paper until the creases softened. It wasn't redemption, not quite. It was a reminder that choices had consequences that did not always obey the scripts written by the loudest voices. In the city, the law declared the night a necessary institution. In our living room, Mara and I had our own verdicts. We had not chosen the easy path. We had chosen to see. And sometimes, seeing is the most radical action left to those who have forgotten how to be brave. Please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give the video a like, comment your thoughts, and share the video with others.